realismo maravilloso.
Magic realism.
Magic realism.
Yeah.
You can find another tradition about the expression of the earth in Latin America, about the indigenous people. But sometimes in Argentine literature you can find a very strong urban and aesthetic literature during the 20th century. Borges maybe is a commonplace to say that, but I feel closer than another writers, maybe not very famous than Borges, like Juan José Sá, for example. Juan José Sá is another author of Open Letter. He died maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Yeah. I think his writing changed the Argentine literature because he started to write about the perception, about natural perception, about a very strong idea about the sense of the poetic and aesthetic meaning in the prose, not in the poetic, in the poems,
yeah.
in the prose. Yeah. So I feel so close to his writing.
Is there any book in particular that you think of when you think of Sayre?
Well, I like for example, a novel called Nadie Nada Nunca. No one.
Nothing, no one.
Nothing.
No one, never.
Nadie, no one.
No one.
Nothing, never.
Yeah. Chad?
Yeah, it's translated by Margaret Sayers Peden. I think it's available from Serpent's Tail.
All right.
It's a very rare novel because in this novel Sayre writes about kidnapping in the dictatorship of Argentina. But this kidnapping is not a testimonial or denunciative. It doesn't have a denunciative form.
Yeah.
Maybe in this novel the kidnapping is the more lateral. On the side of the plot. The plot is about the experience of
bodyguard.
Bodyguard on the river, close to the house where the cattle was kidnapped.
Yeah.
So it's about the nature, about the sense, about the history, about memory. It's about nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about nothing, almost nothing.
The best
but
books are about nothing.
you can find there a very strong idea, a very strong commitment with his time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Sayre because his novel, the consequence of the reading of his novel is you have to ask you about the meaning of the word,
yeah.
the meaning of the facts of the word.
Yeah. His books also seem very interested in, and this is a parallel I see with your work, in place, not so much in a specific city, but with the physical environment. And I noticed this a lot in My Two Worlds too. And I was wondering, you've been living in New York City now for a while, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel that's affected what you're writing, or has it influenced, what you're writing about?
Well, for me, I don't know. For me, living in New York City is a kind of I don't know, abstract situation because, of course, New York City is a very strong city with a lot of stimulus, stimulation, yeah, cultural and urban and landscape stimulation.
Yeah.
But for me, basically, New York City is a place to walk because it's a nice city to walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. For me, I think I feel in New York City as a isolated man. Yeah. Maybe because of the language or
The size,
yeah.
number of people, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think maybe we should open it up for questions if anyone has something they'd like to ask of Margaret or Sergio. Yes? Yeah.
Okay. Margaret, you briefly touched on the mechanics of the translation, and I don't speak Spanish, so I can't compare it to the original, but I was kind of wondering how closely your translation follows that structure of the original, because I found the translation to have a sort of intriguing complexity and kind of run-on sentence structure to it. So I was wondering your process, how closely you kept that structure, and if you did stray from it, and if you were at any point ever tempted to kind of streamline anything.
Yeah, this was part of the learning curve. I think at the beginning I was my approach included some streamlining, and maybe if I look back at the excerpt that appeared in Baum, I would see some sentences that maybe I restored basically to the original. No, by the end of this translation, I was really trying to stay quite close to the original, and I really did find that by the end to be the most straightforward way of translating the book. So, of course, there may be variations that would be caused by something. If it's too close, it would be very, very clumsy in English. It's like we're looking at some of these.
Yeah, sometimes you can choose. You can choose between the music or the tone or the
register.
The register of the text in the original language. In one side and in another side on the literary. Literary of the text. Yeah. And I remember sometimes you prefer to respect the tone, the register, the music of the original, with the same meaning, but without the same words.
Yeah. Or actually, sometimes some of our word choices actually were very, very close to the Spanish.
Yeah.
And I asked Sergio, is this word strange in Spanish? Because that was one of the advantages. Something seems strange to me in English. Maybe I would turn it into a very sort of more common English word, Anglo-Saxon. But Sergio would tell me that word in Spanish sounds strange in Spanish. So that I knew that I had sort of the author telling me that here was a word in Spanish that the reader was going to find weird. So I should do the same in English. And so that happens sometimes in English. You might come across a word and say, wow, this is a word that I hadn't really. Lacustrine, for example, which is a word that means related to a lake. I could have simplified that, but the word in Spanish, lacustre, is also very sort of elevated and poetic and not that common. So that was the right choice.
Anyone else? No? Is there anything you guys wanted to add, or should we? No, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all good. I was curious, like, looking back at some of your, I don't know, some of the authors also translated, did you work as closely with them as you did with Sergio? Did that kind of change the dynamic of the translation at all? The fact that you were able to consult him, living in the same city, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there was a very different kind of translation to me. Most of the translations that I've done, sometimes I have had contact with the authors through email. Or other authors, 19th century authors. It's just so.
Seances.
So this was actually our mutual friend Mercedes Rofe, whose poetry I've also translated. That's also a very close collaboration where we're meeting. We go to cafes. It's wonderful. She also lives in New York. There's a very cafe culture in Argentina that we sort of transferred to New York and doing this. Yeah. So it really does make a difference in the translation. Your bar is higher actually, because you know that you know the author, you know that their intent. It's sort of a dynamic that makes you want to really respect their work as much as you can, and yeah. So I would say that for most translators, this sort of collaboration is not that common. So it was a real privilege and a great advantage, I think, that hopefully you can see in the translation.
I'm curious about your method, Sergio, and the importance of walking for you. To what extent, as you're walking, are you gathering material? Are you actually taking notes as you walk, or do you come back to your apartment and take notes, or then do you put that aside and forget it and sit at your desk and invent?
Well, actually, for me, walking is a kind of excuse to do something different, to write something different. I don't believe in the realistic literature. I don't believe in the realism in the arts. I think maybe I can put in my text